Every star is a destination, but the void between them is where we grow. Empires rise on new worlds. Civilizations rise on the journeys to them. We often imagine humanity's first steps to other stars beginning with a lone ship, a brave ark leaping into the void. And that part is true. But the real story begins after the landing, when the engines fire up again, the settlers wave farewell, and the ship heads onward into deeper space. 9 years ago, we followed Unity, humanity's first interstellar ark, as it left Earth, crossed 12 light-years to Tau Ceti, and helped found our first extrasolar settlements. Those early episodes, 60, 61, and 62, or episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Life in a Space Colony, were not meant as the start of a saga, but Unity took on a life of its own. It cameoed in later episodes, even resurfacing hundreds of thousands of years in the future at the galaxy's edge, because its mission was never really about one star. Unity was built to raise explorers, builders, and dreamers, and carry them onward. And after years of fan requests, and because our Arc Swarms episode never quite captured the human side of roaming between the stars, it's time to revisit the ship. Today we begin the next chapter. Fleet Unity, humanity's first interstellar armada. Back in episode 3 of the series, we explored how a colony ship might arrive at its first destination, only to realize the journey must continue, leaving settlers behind, refueling, taking on new crew, and setting off again to sow other worlds. In Unity's case, that meant departing Tau Ceti and heading for 82G Eridani, another 12 light-years farther on. Families grew aboard the ship during the transit, new colonial gear was manufactured in flight, and Unity even began assembling the modules that could become additional ships. So today we return to Unity during this long interstellar passage, the moment when it stopped being a single arc and began becoming the prototype of something far greater, a civilization that lives between the stars. We'll explore that journey, how Unity transforms in flight, how shipborne culture evolves, how a ship-turned fleet can stay unified, how the vessel manufactures the seeds of its next colony long before arrival, and how humanity's first interstellar armada is born not in a shipyard, but in the quiet, endless darkness between the suns. The journey to 82G Eridani. When Unity departed the Tau Ceti system, it didn't simply break orbit, it broke history. It left behind thousands of settlers establishing homes on Aurora and the moons of Odin, Njord, Thor, and Hodor. It left new cities under transparent metal domes, new crater bases, small clusters of cylinder habitats, and a culture already diverging from the Earth it came from over a century earlier. They restocked on raw materials, traded colonists and crew, said goodbyes, and then Unity pointed its bow toward its next destination, 82G Eridani, a long-lived G-type star nearly 12 light-years from Tau Ceti and 20 from Earth. 12 light-years may sound like a casual hop on a cosmic roadmap, not even 1,000th the distance the ship would cover on its new planned journey to the galaxy's edge, but for a vessel the size of Unity, a 2-kilometer-long fusion arc massing over 100 million tons, it represents decades of flight, generations of births and deaths, and the slow drift of a shipboard civilization taking shape. It made the journey to Tau Ceti at a mere 10% of light speed, taking 120 years, but with the upgrades there from technology sent from home and more in flight, they believe they could cut that journey time down to a mere 80 years, and arrive there just over 2 centuries after they departed Earth. This is a critical difference than the most sci-fi discussions of arc ships. Typically in sci-fi they have FTL, so the journey is relatively short. Usually some months let draw parallels to those crossing the Atlantic to reach the American frontier. When we go without FTL, people are often frozen, and even when not, the assumption is everybody on the trip is dying of old age and only have enough kids to replace their numbers. This has a few problems, and we'll join the crew discussion of them momentarily. Why 82 Eridani? If you haven't seen those original episodes from 2016, I don't necessarily recommend them. The show was already past its raw amateur phase, but there's real limitations on graphics and audio, not to mention I had quite the speech impediment in that era. As set the trend for various Life in a Something episodes to follow, we set a fictional universe with some characters, less as story and more as thought stream, envisioning specific technologies, people, and missions, partially help the audience envision things in a fun way, but also because my strategy for thinking through futuristic scenarios and missions isn't to ask how something can succeed, but how I would go about wrecking it. This is a good approach to planning non-futuristic things too. Charles Munger liked to call it inversion, where you flip things around and ask how to make it fail. In his case, how to crash airplanes, rather than just how to make it work. Because an interstellar colonization mission is more about people than just engines and life support, I try to think of it from a crew perspective, and the ship got the name Unity both as a hat tip to the ship that carried the colonists to their new world in the great game Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri, as well as my realizing that the biggest control factor for colony success was unity of the crew and colonists, which might be especially tricky given the volunteers might have a pioneering mindset that often favors individuality and independence. As such, the Unity had a few officers on it, none of whom have names, just the captain of the Unity and senior officers, including the science officer, my main exposition piece, whose graphic was actually a picture of myself in my armory in Iraq. Since I was never on screen back then and only occasionally put photos of myself up, it was a bit of an Easter egg. Now, when we left Tau Ceti, Unity did not travel blindly. 82 Eridani has long been a potential target for colonization, a sun-like star older than our own, with confirmed planets, a likely debris disk full of asteroids, and good odds of a habitable zone world. It's also close enough to be reachable in a human lifetime, at least for those willing to spend that lifetime aboard a rotating cylinder hurtling through the void. And crucially, finding a long-lived, stable star increased the chance of abundant resources: moons, comets, metals, carbonaceous bodies, everything a gardener ship needs to build the next wave of industry. A new life between the stars. Interstellar voyages are never simple cruises. One of the last things they built while prepping to leave Tau Ceti was some of the laser pushing arrays with new fusion reactor design. They will drop these behind them as they go, and they're basically a remote-operated fusion reactor with a drive system and a giant laser that will attach to some icy body loosely on course to Eridani. Tau Ceti will maintain these and one pointed back toward Earth to help ships going to and from the homeworld travel faster. Between the big array near Tau Ceti's sun itself, these will help extend the range people can accelerate or decelerate without fuel longer. Unity accelerates for months. Even a ship able to accelerate at 1G would take a couple months to get their target of 15% light speed, but engines work most efficiently in lower accelerations, and Unity has big habitation drums rotating inside it that would slop all over the place if they accelerated too fast. Water, for instance, in ponds and lakes would angle not parallel to the rotational axis in the floor, but angle out at an acceleration. In our case, Unity was only accelerating at 2% of a G, so there's no major sloshing, but they do have to engage in active pumping to slowly bring water back from the rear of a habitation cylinder to the front. The new XO for the ship was just promoted to that role 9 years in this new voyage, for having come up with a clever upgrade to that system that would cut down on maintenance and energy use. In a colony ship, military prowess is still considered valuable, but is pretty far down the list of important traits. He is the third person in this role since Tau Ceti, as the original XO remained with the colony and the replacement, for unclear reasons, opted to go on ice for the remaining voyage. It's actually a bit mysterious and the source of a lot of gossip on the ship. There's not much to do but gossip some days, but the new XO is assuming his predecessor's reasons were the normal ones. The voyage is long, cryostasis is fairly reliable these days, and he didn't like the job anymore. The captain, who has been running the ship for nearly 150 years at this point, is notoriously demanding of her senior staff. When the XO arrives in the command conference room, the captain isn't there yet, just the chief engineer and the science officer, so he gets a drink and a snack, and after a couple minutes asks the big question: why did I get this job? After exchanging a glance with the science officer, the chief engineer, who is also new in that role, points out the obvious, that the ship is now cruising, so the XO's old job was no longer needed, and he's shown good leadership and initiative in the process. Like most ships, there's a clear chain of command, from loftiest heights to lowest sailor, in case of deaths or losses, but because the crew is effectively immortal, they do not age due to advanced medicine, nor can they move to another ship, so they try to keep seniority out of consideration for the role, limiting it to raw merit, which experience obviously tends to help with. The science officer tells him the XO loudly disagreed with the decision not to accelerate harder and manufacture more pushing arrays in transit. Essentially, the old XO got disenchanted with the voyage that would be taking almost 2 decades longer than they really maxed out their speed, and relied on such beaming arrays to slow them at their destination too. We're pretty confident we can forward deploy them to slow down using less fuel than we'd have to use, and help us slow down cheaper, but it's a purely prototype system, so we want to leave lots of padding for failure or subpar results, the science officer says. Do we have enough fuel to stop if they fail? The XO asks. The assistant engineer, who just arrived, shakes her head. No, we'd have enough to offload most of our colonists and necessary gear, and slow enough they could send relief in under a century or two. Our life support would hold that long, but we could also send more people into cryo. We could also use gravity and close solar past Eridani to shift course to some other star and drift in slower there. We have a lot of backup plans for failure at 15% of light speed, less than the 20% or higher your predecessor suggested. Now you know, says the captain, entering the room. Why don't you explain to us what our old mission is, what changed, and what the new mission is? The XO knows a test when he hears one, so he keeps his answer concise. He explains that the classic reasoning behind interstellar colony ships was simple. If you had FTL, you sent a ship to a nearby star and colonized the most habitable world. Without FTL, you went as fast as your bulky drive system allowed, and either froze your passengers or replaced them as generations rolled on. He is a living example of that, being born and raised aboard Unity not long after it departed Earth. To state the problem, which is also the advantage, while surplus population can go into cryo, the people who sign up for colony missions tend to like the idea of larger families, and on a century-long voyage, there's not much to do except prepare equipment, manufacture gear for destinations, and have kids. We're just over half a light year out from Tau Ceti, and our population is already up 12%. That means a ship arriving in a new system usually has more people than the colony needs to get started, and a lot of us born during the trip consider the ship our home. We don't necessarily want to leave it, or if we do, we might prefer another ship over a planetary settlement. We also have to manufacture everything we need to build a colony and repair the ship, because a 100-year journey demands full industrial self-sufficiency. So the reasoning goes, why stop the ship permanently at a star system? It's too big and specialized to be a useful transport for a mature colony, and it's not particularly valuable to tear apart for raw materials, and even if a small population stays aboard after colonists depart, we can refuel, restock, and head to the next candidate system. During that voyage, we grow our numbers again and rebuild all the colonial gear we need. It keeps people busy and gives them purpose. If too few volunteers sign on for the next leg, we pick a more distant target to give population time to grow. If too many sign on, we consider building additional ships or expanding Unity with new habitat modules, and we can do that during the journey. It's no harder than building space habitats or dome settlements at the destination system. He pauses, then adds, the big paradigm shift, what we now call a gardener ship, is perpetual colonization. We go somewhere, settle it, and journey on. We can reach new worlds far faster than Fallout missions from Earth can, since we are already here. They instead send colonists to those newly settled systems who can arrive a lot faster with the beaming relays, and no need to carry the entire ecosystem on the ship. Every so often we can build another ship, which we can also do in transit. After a while, you don't just have a ship, you have an armada. Eventually you can even divide fleets. In this way we can slowly reach the galactic rim, spreading outward in a wedge or cone. And since both Tau Ceti and Eridani lie generally in that direction, Unity is one of the best candidates to attempt it. But it comes with challenges. It's not just shipborne kids presenting a mission with no end on the horizon. Our mandate would have this vessel doing its job for 250,000 years. Or longer, the captain notes. As such, the XO concludes, Unity cannot function merely as a ship. It must function as a civilization that plants other civilizations, guarding the galaxy as its primary mission while trying to maintain something like a normal daily life. An expanded fleet will help with that. So, do I pass? We'll see, the captain replies. Sit down and let's go over the plans for the first new ship. The long transit culture. The ship's interior, kilometers of hulls, gardens, hydroponics bays, rec centers, reactor walls, become home to tens of thousands. Children born on this leg will grow up knowing the ship's hull is their floor. Educational focus shifts throughout the journey, sometimes to emphasize engineering, others ecology, and sometimes diplomacy needed to build new worlds or keep peace on the ship. Governance gradually transitions from colonial authority to ship polity. Entire families have never known gravity except in the rotating rings. Even most of the colonists who leave the ship to the next system will live in such space habitats, coming to rest on asteroids and moons for a space economy, or living in orbit of a planet during early terraforming, and those habitats built there are going on to serve as the spaceports for the growing planetary economy. Unity doesn't wait until arrival to start building the next colony. During the journey, its internal manufacturer bays turn raw metals into radiators, modular pressure domes, tether anchor pylons, and inertial tankers. It creates spoke modules, detachable industrial pods that can assist in construction before the ship even fully breaks the new system. The ship becomes a factory on cruise, preparing infrastructure for the next colony long before the system is in view. By mid-voyage, Unity is effectively a moving shipyard, a civilization in transit capable of spawning its own support craft. The idea that the Gardener ship becomes seed and sower at once isn't just poetic, it's logistical necessity. Build more habitation modules, ones that can be detached from a ship to remain a settled system. Build more ships to tow them around, smaller ones that can decelerate on less fuel than Unity, helping serve as a vanguard and some to remain behind to jumpstart the space economy in the system, help refuel and resupply Unity, and others to come along with it for the next voyage. Unity's crew continues to receive messages from Earth and Tau Ceti, about a decade out of date from Earth and nearly 2 decades by the time they arrive at Eridani. But even stale news matters. Scientific updates, political debates, new cultural trends, entertainment modules, and jokes long out of fashion back home all circulate aboard the ship as fresh novelties. Shipboard generations grow up with a uniquely fractured sense of time, knowing that everything they learn from home is already half a lifetime old. Meanwhile, Unity itself evolves. During the transit, the fusion engines go through scheduled refits and cautious upgrades, usually tested first on whatever new ship is being built in the fabrication bays. New radiator arrays and forward Whipple shields are assembled to replace those worn down by nanometeor impacts. As new ships take shape, the officers who oversee their construction are to become their senior crew once commissioned. Fresh habitation modules trail behind Unity in long chains until they're detached and shaped into smaller vessels. These new homes and holes offer restless people a chance to build something of their own before ever reaching the next star system. It's the ultimate pressure valve. At each destination, people can scatter across continents and moons, remain with the fleet, or join a new armada splitting off from the first. RXO, mindful of his predecessor's concerns and fate, knows that many of the original Earthborn crew who remained with the Unity after Tau Ceti have grown restless. For some, including his own parents, the new desire is to return home, back to Earth, or at least back to Tau Ceti. Unity in its current incarnation and fully fueled masses hundreds of billions of tons. Most of the ships it builds, by contrast, mass only kilotons or low megatons without fuel. It has bulked up considerably since its first, already massive incarnation, mostly on raw materials and propellant. Most of the ships it builds, by contrast, mass only kilotons or low megatons without fuel. The builders produce far more small vessels than large ones, so the XO proposes creating a hybrid lifeboat and return craft, an automated ship with 1,000 cryopods that can ride a laser or particle beam back to Tau Ceti, or even Earth from there. It would weigh only about 1,000 tons to construct. These pods could also serve as rotating sleep compartments for people who prefer to ice nap between systems, and in the unlikely event of catastrophic damage, they double as escape vehicles, drifting for decades, perhaps centuries, until a faster rescue craft from the last system catches up. Thus, the phases of each transit emerge: refuel and resupply. Then, while construction never truly stops, focus first on return pods and expansion habitats, then on new ships, and finally on the full suite of colonial infrastructure. No point building pressure domes decades before you can deploy them. Meanwhile, people take up special long-term projects. Let's build a university, let's construct a sports arena, let's film our first holodrama to send back to Earth and the colonies. Let's build a habitat that mimics the conditions of the planet we intend to terraform, 80% Earth gravity and 27-hour day, and start adapting life and ourselves to those conditions. And for the individual, let's finally write that novel. Let's read all the books we've been putting off. Let's play every old Dungeons & Dragons module from the 20th century. Let's start a family, raise some kids. Unity is no longer just traveling, it's becoming something more. A prototype for an interstellar armada, built not in a shipyard but by the ship itself, as it drifts toward the next star. And when the glow of 82G Eridani finally brightens from a point to a disk, Unity is ready, not just to land, but to begin building once more. When we talk about building the first interstellar armada, it's easy to imagine bold, almost reckless engineering decisions, pushing materials to their limits, chasing speed, betting everything on breakthrough technology. But history suggests that rarely survives contact with institutions. If you enjoy the tension between visionary engineering and bureaucratic reality, check out Muster's Nebula series Unsealed, starting with Episode 1, Underwater Fighter Jet. It dives into the real story of the Soviet Alpha-class submarine, originally conceived as a high-speed underwater fighter meant to outrun and overwhelm carrier groups, not just hide from them. What began as an audacious concept gradually collided with safety concerns, doctrine, and internal resistance, reshaping the final machine in fascinating ways. It's a perfect reminder that revolutionary vehicles, whether Cold War submarines or star-spanning arc ships, aren't just technical projects. They are political, cultural, and human ones. Nebula is home to Mustard, myself, and many other thoughtful creators, and it's where every episode of SFA premieres early and ad-free, along with my monthly exclusives and extended editions. Right now, with my link with the QR code on the screen, you can get 50% off a yearly plan, just $30 for the whole year, about $2.50 a month. Head to go.nebula.tv/IsaacArthur and start watching today. And before we jump back to the episode, on March 16th, we'll be celebrating the 100th anniversary of Robert Goddard's first liquid-propelled rocket launch. And for those of you living in the DC area, the National Space Society and the Alliance for Space Development will be holding our annual March Storm, March 16th to 18th, to meet with members of Congress and their staffs and discuss space exploration and development. If you'd like to help make the content we discuss here become a reality, to boldly go out and explore and settle space, come join us for that using the QR code or the link in the episode description. A Disunified Fleet. Unity's transformation into our Armada does not happen all at once. It begins quietly, almost invisibly, during the long cruise between stars. Every new habitation module added, every generation born aboard, every small workshop or fabrication bay that expands into a prospector ship or a supply tender, all these become the roots of a fleet. Small at first, more an extended family of vessels than a navy, but unmistakably growing. Some get made for missions that won't happen this time, like a potential prospector ship to divert to a passing rogue planet to resupply off of, deemed not yet ready for deployment, but good for practice or emergencies. Others improvised on the fly, like an ag-rehab ship to be the fleet breadbasket, when a new movement in the fleet leads several hundred to want to live a simple, idyllic rural life, not very involved with other fleet projects. Over the decade-long slowdown toward 82G Eridani, the fleet settles into a rhythm. New hulls are commissioned, older modules are repurposed, and restless souls find freedom that only a ship of their own can offer. Some become labs, some become small farms or clinics, others turn into exploratory scouts. What matters is that they remain tied together, culturally, politically, and technologically, by unity at the center. Keeping an Interstellar Armada coherent is no small feat. Even drifting apart a few million kilometers can mean weeks of corrective burns. So the fleet circulates, smaller ships looping in graceful arcs around Unity's big fusion wake, periodic rendezvous windows, regular communication pings. They share spare parts, crew rotations, and long-term projects. The Armada has become a moving city, a civilization in a convoy. But accelerating such a convoy is something else entirely. Fusion braking alone would eat up fuel, and fuel is always precious, so the mission charter calls for forward-deployed braking arrays, thin, kilometers-wide structures built from modular panels baked in the light of Eridani itself. They serve as both power stations and emitters, turning stellar energy into directed beams that push against the ship's sail and help bleed off the speed. The fleet will burn most of its slowdown fuel when those are detached from the fleet, giving them time to reach it ahead of the fleet and for the Vanguard ship sent with them to test the systems themselves and perform any changes needed. The slower the fleet is moving as it approaches, the longer the beams can stay on them, pushing them even slower, so you burn fuel before you go. As word of success travels back at light speed, the fleet would attach its space pushing beam system with reactors and reserve fuel to form a bridge back to Tau Ceti. One ship, stuffed with cryopods and fusion fuel refining gear, will retain enough fuel to break entirely on its own, and enough pods to stuff every living soul from the fleet. This is no seat-of-the-pants mission anymore. Everything comes with backup contingency plans and contingencies for those too. Sending an advanced craft is risky but necessary. The Armada needs a beachhead, even if that beach is nothing more than a draftsman grid of solar panels floating in the twilight between star and void. It becomes a rite of passage. the first new ship built entirely in transit, small compared to Unity, agile but fully capable, volunteers for the job. Its officers are drawn from Unity's builders, its hull engineered from recycled radiator plates and metal formed in microgravity, a ship made by the journey, for the journey. And as Unity and its growing armada begin the slow glide toward Eridani, the crew knows this is not just the end of a voyage. This is the threshold of a new mission, one that will define whether the Gardner concept works at all. Ahead lies a new star, behind them a young armada, and between them, one long decade to prepare.